Cammack is a Republican congresswoman from Florida and member of the House Homeland Security Committee. This topic is personal for her husband, a firefighter and paramedic, as well as a SWAT medic. Congresswoman, thank you for being here today. Ahead of the holiday, we stop first and we mourn the loss of that 8-year-old boy who went out to enjoy a parade in his hometown there of Waukesha, and he has now succumbed to his injuries there in the hospital, and he has passed away. It's horrific. It is horrific, every detail of this story. Why was this man allowed to be free on the streets, especially going back to the words of that DA who said it was inevitable that without change to approach, someone would die?
I mean, the whole thing makes your heart break time and time again. Since it happened, I've talked with my husband about this, and he said, this points exactly to the frustration that so many law enforcement officers around the country have been experiencing as this ultra-progressive left agenda goes after so-called bail reform. These law enforcement officers do their job. They go and arrest these criminals, these violent criminals, and next day or 2 days later, they are back out on the streets. What is the point? And now we have a situation in Wisconsin, which is heartbreaking. Never should have happened. And of course, this is getting the attention that we have been calling for, the dangerous one-size-fits-all approach that the ultra-progressive left, like George Soros, who has been funding these efforts at the state and local levels for years, this is the result. You have people that have done a broad brush approach when it comes to bail reform. And let's be clear, I think there is a definite distinction between criminal justice reform and bail reform. Bail reform is before there has been due process. And I think that's important to note because this man had a rap sheet a mile long. He was in the courthouse for a violent offense. This wasn't some petty drug crime. This was a violent offense. And $1,000, heads need to roll for this. I mean, you can see the rap sheet that he has. When you have a repeat criminal habitual offender, as we saw with this criminal, this to me is 100% a failure of the system that has been in place because of this liberal approach. Like AOC and the squad have been calling for no cash bail, no cash bonds. To me, that's ridiculous. We need to give time to the prosecutors, to the judge, to really determine on a case-by-case basis when it is appropriate and when it is not.
It all seems obvious. Everything you're saying as his rap sheet was just scrolling there. We see it. We all see it. Do you think that the left will face reality? Do you think this will serve as a wake-up call?
The fact that you saw the DA making a statement in 2007 that said, people are going to die because of this one-size-fits-all approach, that just goes to show that they care more about a political agenda and outcome than people's lives. They are
That's a sad reality.
That they can't even come to terms with the fact that their policies have resulted in multiple deaths in a Christmas parade from a violent offender who was a habitual offender. That, to me, again, points to the fact that we have got to get very serious about these issues that are really, in this particular case, criminal justice reform, bail reform. These are state and local issues.
It just stands out to me. I spoke to one of the representatives who covers that district right after this happened, describing that parade that has been going on it's been a tradition for 6 decades in that town. And he describes it typically a scene out of a Norman Rockwell painting. And wow, has this just been just a nightmare for that community. Meanwhile, Congressman, the Biden administration is asking a federal appeals court to immediately reinstate its vaccine mandate for private businesses after a different appeals court put it on hold pending several lawsuits. Meantime, Denver is the latest city now to once again require masks be worn indoors unless you are vaccinated. Here's the mayor there.
We are issuing what I like to call a VASC or mask mandate. Either your venue or business is requiring to proof of vaccination, or you choose to be a place where only masks will be required. But either or, as a venue or a restaurant or type of operation, we are putting a mandate in place.
And one California county has taken it a step further, Congresswoman, imposing a sweeping indoor mask mandate now that includes private homes. You heard that right. The county's requiring people who do not live in the same household to now wear masks while gathering, regardless of vaccination status. It's hard to, I don't know. I'm trying to just picture that. But Congresswoman, where do you fall on masks, mandates, vax versus masks? I mean, some really important decisions have to be made here because a lot of lives are affected.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is, in a word, all of these mandates are unconstitutional. Unconstitutional. That is exactly what they are. And there is no politician on the planet that can tell you as an individual in the United States of America what medical decisions you should be making, because that is a conversation for you, your family, and your doctor. And let's be clear, the Constitution is not a la carte. You can't pick and choose what you want to enforce one day and trample on the next. And I don't know where Biden gets off on this, but he clearly is doing everything he can to subvert the will of the Fifth Circuit Court and the will of the American people. I think
that's a good point. That ambiguity, the changing of the mind, that's really hard on individuals, but it's really hard on businesses that have to follow these rules or they're penalized. It can be costly, and it's a real problem not to know what's coming your way.